To map the unknown areas of New Guinea, several exploration expeditions were conducted in the past. In the previous episode, we followed these expeditions that laid the foundation for future expeditions by mapping the south and southwest of New Guinea. Many rivers were explored to find the right ones for the expeditions. As far as the mountains themselves, however, they had never made it. The first South New Guinea expedition was conducted in 1907 and was the first formal attempt in a series of 3 Dutch expeditions to reach the perennial snow-covered mountain peaks of central Dutch New Guinea from the southern coast. However, this expedition never reached these mountain peaks due to numerous setbacks. Before I go any further, real quick. If you want to support what I am doing, join me. Give me a like, share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. The first South New Guinea expedition was conducted in 1907 and was the first formal attempt in a series of 3 Dutch expeditions to reach the perennial snow-covered mountain peaks of central Dutch New Guinea from the southern coast. The perpetually snow-capped mountains of New Guinea had never been explored by humans before. It was therefore a challenge for the first expeditions to reach and investigate them. Not much has been published about this expedition. Nevertheless, here I give a brief summary about this expedition which in itself laid the foundation for the subsequent second expeditions. All staff members have had a lot of experience in previous New Guinea expeditions and will also participate in future expeditions. Some names may sound familiar to you. Some members of this expedition will also participate again in the second South expedition. From the Javanese port of Surabaya in April 1907, with aboard the steamship Valk, the expedition set sail for New Guinea. The scrapped naval vessel Zwaluw, a ship without machinery, was taken in tow to serve as a bivouac ship, that is, stocked with food for the expedition members on the outward voyage and as a storehouse for the scientific collections to be constructed on the return voyage. Through the mouth of the southern North River, which was to have its source far in the mountainous interior and close to the snow-capped Wilhelmina Peak, they steamed upstream until Bivouac Island in the middle of the wide river was reached, where the Swallow was left with a small guard. Further upstream in July, Lawrence and Van Nuys built Camp Alkmaar, and not far from there the first lower mountain ranges of the Central Massif could be observed. Due to the unnavigability of the river, the expedition now had to continue on foot through the jungle. From there they continued inland with smaller boats and canoes. In several places along the riverbanks, small bivouacs were built that were also left manned. Transportation of food and other supplies then took place between the bivouac ship and the temporary settlements along the river. Lower ridges were explored, but previously unseen higher ridges came into view that prevented a march to the eternal snow. The trek was longer and harder than anyone had suspected. Exhaustion and illness began to take their toll. Most of the porters were now suffering from beriberi, and a shortage of food and fresh drinking water was developing. Inevitably, the return journey had to be accepted. The bivouacs were abandoned and both ships left the area. The Falcon towed the old bivouac ship Swallow to the coastal town of Merauke, and after a rest, they sailed back to Surabaya. Because the goal of entering the perpetual snow of central Dutch New Guinea was not met, the expedition was considered a failure by its principals. The expedition would soon be followed up by the Second South New Guinea expedition. This expedition was the second attempt in a series of 3 Dutch expeditions to reach the perennially snow-capped mountain peaks of central Dutch New Guinea from the southern coast. The plan was to first explore the Van der Sandy River in 3 stages. First with the expedition ships, then with a steam sloop, and the last stretch with canoes. The team's staff includes many familiar names. Lieutenant Habema was added as commander of the military detachment. He played an important role in this expedition. The total expedition team consisted of individuals from different areas of the then Dutch East Indies. Apart from the staff. 4 sergeants, 2 corporals, 34 fusiliers, 1 soldier, 20 workers and porters, some Malays and another 82 Dayaks. The tremendous contribution that led to the success of the expedition came primarily from the efforts of the Dayaks. They are very disciplined, loyal, and very hard workers. They cut open trails through the forest, collected animals and plants, built the bivouacs, made canoes out of tree trunks, and performed all kinds of casual work. The Dayaks were also excellent fishermen and hunters. This proved invaluable during expedition trips. To collect birds, they used blowpipes with poison arrowheads. This minimized damage to the birds of the collection. Two ships have once again been made available for this expedition. They are the Eagle and the Falcon. As in the previous expedition, the Eagle was used as a bivouac ship for storing food, equipment and measuring devices, storage of collections during the trips and as a hospital. On August 15, 1909, the expedition left for New Guinea. Again, the Falcon took the bivouac ship in tow. Only this time it was the Eagle. In Timor, coal was loaded and also in Dabo. Then it set sail for the North River. In the meantime, the name had changed to Lawrence River. The expedition leaders believe they will be more successful this time than last time. Everyone on board was excited about this attempt. In fact, they followed the same route as the ships from the first expedition. As New Guinea came into view, one could see the Charles Lewis Mountains in the distance, very hazy because of the rain. The ship sailed closer to the coast, which consists mainly of mangroves. In the process they passed small islands. At the mouth of the East Bay they anchored. Everyone on board was very busy, because there was a lot to organize and prepare. The next day, the Eagle was disconnected from the Falcon and the Falcon slowly sailed up the Lawrence River. That is the new name for the North River. They were welcomed by Papuans who descended on the ships in canoes. Bartering took place where empty cans, bottles and knives were exchanged for cultural artifacts from the Papuas. The canoes sailed alongside the Falcon for some time and then disappeared. While sailing upstream, one enjoys the view of New Guinea. One sees on the banks here and there palm trees, banana trees and sometimes some Papua houses. After some time, the Vok stops at a village, where a number of canoes have been waiting for the ship. Some Papuans recognize Mr. Nuhuis from the previous expedition. Here, too, bartering was done. The Papuans who live along this river are already accustomed to Westerners. Further upstream, an abandoned cottage was observed on the bank and it was decided to anchor here to take a closer look. The journey then continued upstream and at a small settlement the ships anchored. The residents fled when they saw a gun. Apparently they had encountered this before, but after some time they had overcome their fear and returned. Again bartering was done and right away the opportunity was taken to explore the swampy surroundings. No large trees could be found by the Dayaks for making canoes. Then the anchors were lifted and the journey continued. After sailing for some time, the team came to a junction of the Lawrence River and the Van der Sandy River. It was decided to sail up the Van der Sandy River as much as possible and then anchor. Then to take a steam sloop up the river. The river is still wide, there is little current, and the weather is clear. Everyone often looked at the bank to see if there were any Papuan houses. While sailing up the Van der Sandy River with the steam sloop and canoes in tow, one enjoyed the screeching white cockatoos and the calls of hornbills. Along the bank one saw kingfishers on overhanging branches. Sometimes a sunbathing crocodile jumped into the water. During the boat trip, many birds could be seen both in the air and along the riverbanks, which made the zoologists happy. After camping on a small riverbank, it was decided to send the steam sloop back to the bivouac because the river was becoming very shallow and there were logs in the water. The trip continued with the canoes. Sailing on the river was very risky because of the logs underwater. These could severely damage the boats or cause them to sink. The nature of the river slowly began to change. The mud gave way to fine gravel and gradually to larger roll stones. The depth became shallower and the vegetation along the bank changed. Sometimes the canoes had to be carried across the riverbeds. While camping, the Dayaks shot some crowned pigeons while hunting and a small rare beautiful bird for the zoological collection. The first rapids began to arrive and the Dayaks are demonstrating their agility with the canoes. Because the river became shallow, there were many rapids and many logs lying in and across the river, further sailing was no longer possible. It was thus decided to return to the Eagle and Vok ships and then steam up as far as possible via the Lawrence River. The Van der Sandy River proved unsuitable for the trip to the mountains. Towing boats across the fast-flowing river would also require too much energy. Due to heavy rain, the return trip had to be postponed. In the meantime there was hunting and fishing, and a nice Cuscus maculatus was shot for the zoological collection. Mr. Nilhuis had caught a large catfish. The next morning, at sunrise, the expedition continued its journey. It promises to be a beautiful day. The return trip downstream was risky because of possible floating logs in the water. Birds of paradise were observed along the forest edge. A brief stop was made at a bivouac from the outward journey. Nature startled us for a moment, as several hornbills and a telegolo flew away startled. Everyone was disappointed, but happy to be back at the camp and the boats. The forests in this region turned out to contain large trees, much to the delight of the Dyaks who had stayed behind with the expedition ships. Upon returning to the ships, we found that the Dyaks left behind had not been idle. They cut 12 canoes out of tree trunks despite the heavy rains. Immediately the canoes were tested and made ready for the next step in the expedition. The dugout canoes proved to play an important and valuable role during this expedition. Thanks to the efforts of the Dyaks. It rained all day and it was quite foggy. Everyone took it easy. Still, there was some hunting for the zoological collection and for dinner. The river is also unreliable at that time, so they waited for better weather. Due to these rainy days, the opportunity was taken to take inventory of supplies and update the zoological collection. Since the Van der Sandy River is not an option, it was decided that we would then proceed up the Lawrence River toward the mountains. The Falcon will tow the Eagle as far up the river as possible and then return to Merauke with excess carriers who will then remain in Merauke as backup. Very early the next morning at sunrise, the Eagle and the Falcon pulled up their anchor, and after the Falcon let out its screaming whistle as a farewell, the ships left up the Lawrence River toward the mountains. The Lawrence River was formerly known as the North River and was found to flow through its estuary and easily navigable lower reaches to the snow-capped mountains. The expedition ship, De Valk, attempted to sail as far up this river as possible. This map shows how erratic the Lawrence River is. The Lawrence River was sailed for several hours up to Bivouac Island, a camp which had been set up by the 1907 expedition. However, this one was completely overgrown. Here, the expedition ship the Eagle was anchored for resupply, provisions, and storage of the zoological collection. The Dyaks sent to hunt for the zoological collection returned with a large number of unique birds. In fact, they receive a bounty with each catch. This catch had to be taken care of quickly and processed professionally. That morning it was mostly cloudy, but soon the weather cleared up. From an island which was in the middle of the Lawrence River, the Wilhelmina Top, which is the snow-covered mountain, was observed. All canoes were used because everyone wanted to see it. The falcon that the eagle has already detached leaves for Merauke with the zoological collection and some of the team's people. The eagle remains behind with part of the expedition team. Falcon bids a final farewell and will not return. Now the expedition team is completely on its own. Further upstream, a large camp has been built where most of the supplies and equipment will be stored. From the place where the Eagle is anchored, these will be transported upstream by steam sloops and canoes. The camp has been named Alkmaar. The Alkmaar camp consisted of a number of buildings. A spacious house with a roof of small boards, barracks for the Dyaks, porters, soldiers and other members of the expedition. Also a shed that served as storage for the equipment and provisions. And some small buildings for a pharmacy, workshop and storage of the zoological and botanical collections. Everyone was happy and satisfied with this comfortable camp, and after everything was set up and in place, hunting for the zoological and botanical collection was done in the spare time. Quite a lot was collected then, including many birds. The Alkmaar camp housed about 100 men. From here the hikes toward the mountains took place. The plan was to set up an intermediate camp halfway with provisions for possible calamities. A few days before departure, the Dyaks held a sacrificial ceremony to gain favor with the gods. In total, the expedition team participating in the hike consisted of 35 men. After all preparations for the hike were done, the doctor took a collective picture. There were 12 days planned for land operation, but no one knew it would take 3 months because of the many difficulties during the trek. It rained terribly the night before departure and people feared flooding, but in the morning the weather cleared and the sun rose cautiously behind the mountains. Everyone was tense and in good spirits because today the march to the mountains begins. From the Alkmaar camp, the entire group departed into the jungle. The morning mist still radiated through the trees and plants. The terrain was hilly with steep slopes. Large wild animals fled the expedition. One heard only the birds and mainly the shrill sound of the small lories and the distant sounding calls of the birds of paradise. While walking through the jungle one saw all kinds of small animals like frogs and beetles. And those who paid close attention saw strange kinds of insects jumping and crawling everywhere, or on the leaves, tree trunks, and on the ground. The murmur of a river caught the group's attention and they decided to head for it. Arriving at a creek, they decided to set up a bivouac here and spend the night, giving the tired team a much-needed rest. The several hard hours of climbing and struggling through the jungle took a lot of energy. Everyone was in good spirits and enjoyed the impressive tropical surroundings, and there were also many insects and birds. While the bivouac is set up, the Dayak hunters go hunting for dinner and for the collection. Here's some birds for the zoological collection. Due to abundance, crown pigeon was on the menu for everyone that evening. It rained all night and the next day. We therefore had to postpone the trip until the rain had passed. The rain made walking very difficult for everyone. It was especially hard for the porters. The morning the rain stopped and the forest was still shrouded in mist, the expedition team set off for the mountains. The group reached higher ground after many ascents and descents. The nights were a lot colder and the landscape had changed somewhat. While crossing a wild stream, some more frogs were caught for the zoological collection. There were many birds in this area and around the bivouac, and at a brief rest stop a black bird of paradise was shot. There was also many collected. The Dayak spotted a special rat around the camp and caught it with much fanfare. A rare cuscus was also captured. The cicadas stopped their music when the expedition members passed by. Walking through the forest was tough, but it wasn't boring, because there was always plenty to see while walking, such as all kinds of small animals, orchids, and lots of butterflies. Thank you for watching my video. For the continuation of this expedition, watch the next episode, Standing on Eternal Snow. Oh yes, and don't forget to subscribe. I do appreciate your support.